Tropical storm Harvey is expected to make its way back inland on Wednesday, bringing even more heavy rains and powerful winds to the Gulf Coast. For more on why this storm system is so powerful and why it has lasted so long, I want to bring in Jeff Berardelli, lead meteorologist at our West Palm Beach affiliate WPEC, Scott Padgett, the chief meteorologist for our Dallas station KTVT, and Craig Setzer, the chief meteorologist for our Miami station WFOR. Welcome to all of you. Let's begin with this. Harvey was downgraded to a tropical storm Saturday, yet it remains in the area, pounding the Gulf Coast. I think the thing that a lot of folks might be wondering about now is, why is this storm stalling at this point? Jeff, let me start with you.
Yeah, well, the basic bottom line here is we had a big blocking area of high pressure across the southwestern United States, and that basically started forcing its way south at the same time as Harvey started making its way to the north. It trapped the storm, forced it back into the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, some of our computer models said would happen many days ago, and now it's finally releasing that hold. A trough of low pressure, a little front is coming along. It's going to pull the circulation northward, and we're seeing that right now.
I wonder, Scott, let me ask you, the mention of computer models here. Folks going into this had heard potentially of the flooding that could come to Houston. But of course, what we've heard from city officials since then is that this was unprecedented, that there was no way to tell that this much rain would be falling on both Houston and the surrounding areas. Can you tell us more about what it is that your models were showing at the time, 24 hours, 48 hours ahead of when the really heavy rains started to dump on Houston?
Elaine, the forecast, some forecast models, even 4 or 5 days out, were showing Harvey's path and then stalling, and then just so much rain continuing to fall. And there were a couple of forecast models that were saying maybe 30 inches, possibly near 40 inches of rain. And a lot of the meteorologists were saying that. The challenge that we have is, yes, we say this, but what the public hears it might be a different story. Now, this is unprecedented. I've never seen in my 21-year career, almost 52 inches of rain from a tropical system, and that's now the second largest in U.S. history. So the computer models were having a pretty good handle on that, and then 24 to 48 hours out, they definitely were showing we're going to see another 20 to possibly 25 inches of rain on top of what was already fallen and had already fallen for Harvey. So the forecast computer models, some of them were pretty good at being able to see this about 4 to 5 days out. Some of them had a little bit of a trouble, but all of them saw this stall, and we all knew that this was going to be a bad situation.
And Craig, you're in Miami. Give us a sense, when we talk about these computer models, I mean, what are we talking about here? Are there dozens of predictions that are being made by all these computer models? And then your job is to try and sort of suss out where it looks like you might be seeing perhaps a little bit of agreement on some of these models?
So, Elaine, what we were watching as of Monday night was the models were all coming into very sharp agreement that Harvey would head towards the middle Texas coast, and that Harvey would be a strong storm and then stall along the coast there. And so what we're looking for then is, are the models changing? Are they shifting position? It didn't happen. From Monday night through Tuesday night, Wednesday, everything was beat on. So that raises our confidence. And also the conditions, what we call the antecedent conditions, very warm waters in the Gulf, humidity levels that were pretty high in the atmosphere, and very low wind shear, all favorable conditions for a real strong, in this case, a major hurricane.
Jeff, the question has been raised on social media and elsewhere about whether or not climate change played a role here in Harvey. What is the answer to that?
Well, this is a big question, and you could spend probably hours talking about this, but no doubt I think that at least it contributed to or enhanced Harvey. I mean, we're living in a warmer world. Since 1900, our air temperatures have gone up about 1.5 degrees. Water temperatures in the tropics have gone up about a degree, a little bit more than that. So there's more warm water to strengthen these storms. We saw rapid intensification with Harvey. We saw it last year with Matthew. Storms seem to be intensifying a little faster. But the important part in this storm was the fact that with warmer water and warmer air especially, it can hold more water vapor. So we're looking at heavier rainfall. And then kind of the last piece to the puzzle is that we think that in a warmer climate, with climate change being a factor, the steering currents, the jet streams start to slow down a little bit, and that slows the storms, and you end up with more blocking. And we talked about blocking earlier. So, you know, whether or not this happened during this storm, during Harvey, or if it was a coincidence, it's a little bit too early to know. There'll be an attribution study on this, but I do think it's safe to say that we're living in a warmer world, and most of these systems, especially the stronger ones, are impacted by climate change. At least that's my opinion.
So, Scott, Jeff mentions steering and jet stream. Remind us, because we hear these terms all the time, but I think, you know, for folks who are wondering, well, how does that actually impact a storm like Harvey? How does that actually work? Define for us what we're talking about here when you talk about quote unquote steering currents, the jet stream, and how that actually physically is able to keep a storm like Harvey almost in place.
Yeah, and I know a lot of us, we start to throw out these meteorological terms, but a hurricane, a tropical system, is going to go to the path of least resistance. So kind of find its little way to wiggle its way in towards an area of low pressure, so the lowest pressure around. When you have a high pressure over here and a high pressure over here, the low pressure is going to try to go into the middle, and that's what we have. So these systems, yes, they can work their way. They have that area of low pressure. They develop themselves, kind of work their way from east to west, but they need to be steered by something in the upper atmosphere. So the jet stream, that fast ribbing movement of air higher up in the atmosphere, is what can also pick this up and maybe turn it a little bit more. And a lot of the times we see these tropical systems come on shore or maybe hug the coastline and then get pulled off pretty quickly in a number of days. That didn't happen here because we had one area of high pressure to the east of it, one area of high pressure, as Jeff said, off towards the west of it, and the jet stream was further off towards the north in parts of the upper Midwest. So it wasn't able to kind of grab it and pull it away. Kind of like a, if you will with me, maybe a small little hockey puck on an air hockey table, just kind of hanging out, that hasn't been hit by that, you know, as I try to hit it really, really hard, just kind of hanging out in there in the middle, and you're like, now who's going to get it? It needs some sort of motion, some sort of force to be able to pull it or move it away. So that's what we talk about as far as steering currents are concerned. All
right. And finally, Craig, let me ask you, you know, people are going to look at Harvey and wonder, is this an anomaly, or is this storm indicative of the kind of weather that we'll be experiencing more often in the years to come?
Well, you know, we know that steering patterns, currents, and also hurricane frequency goes in what we call multi-decadal cycles. In the 20s, 30s, 40s, there were many, many hurricanes, even into the 50s. And then there was a lag or a decrease in the amount of hurricane activity that lasted through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And then there's been an uptick again in the 90s through the 2000s. So we might be on the edge of an increase in activity. Might just be an anomaly, as you say. And as Jeff was mentioning, this attribution thing, the other side of that coin is if you're going to attribute maybe a stronger Harvey to climate change, then I think the other side of the coin is it's been a record length of time that the U.S. has had a major hurricane hit. The last one was in 2005. So in recorded history, there has never been that long of a period without major hurricane landfalls.
Important point. All right, Jeff Berardelli, Scott Padgett, and Craig Setzer, my thanks to all three of you. Really appreciate the insight.
You're welcome.
Thank you.